Please.
So what are your views on gun control laws? With all these college shootings, do you think there should be more or less armed security officers in the campuses?
In the campuses. Okay, so the question was gun control laws and whether we should have more or less armed security forces on campuses specifically. Well, it's a good question. I mean, it depends on whether you buy the logic of deterrence. The logic of deterrence being that, you know, the more weapons are known to be present, the more likely it is that if anybody engages in some type of action, it will be highly risky to them. And the people who are thinking about doing this are rational and wouldn't engage in action that would threaten their own survival. So if you buy the logic of deterrence, then, you know, it makes sense that you should have more weapons available for people to defend themselves. Now, you know, a lot of people who make these types of claims, you know, you could say to them, well, I guess then you would also want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, right? Because if you buy deterrence, the logic of deterrence, then you have to buy that the more weapons are out there, the safer we are, and especially the more really destructive weapons there are out there, the safer they are. And I haven't really met anybody who thinks that more guns on campus are a good idea, and that so is also Iran with a bomb. So I don't know, I think there's a little bit of intellectual inconsistency in that argument. At the same time, you know, the truth is that there have been some empirical studies on this, and there's some controversy in the empirical studies. So some of them kind of find that the more guns are around, or the higher concentration of guns per population in a place, the higher the rates of violence. But then there are also studies that have found that this is quite contingent on whether you're in an urban area or a rural area. For example, in rural areas, there are very high proportions of guns per population, but very low rates of homicide or police brutality, for that matter. And so what we need to do is have a really well-defined and methodologically flawless, or as flawless as we can get it, set of studies that validate those findings, and that do so outside of just the context of single states, and that find a way to control for all of the confounding variables in these studies. For example, the fact that most rural areas not only have a high proportion of guns, but they also are majority white, and the police are majority white, and there isn't the same kinds of political and racial dynamics that occur in major cities, and that might actually be explaining the low levels of violence more than the guns per se. I have not seen a convincing study that has dealt with all of my methodological concerns, so I actually don't know what the answer is on this, but I know that we need to do more research on it.